I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
1961, a new president and a bold challenge, one that America would fulfill 8 short years later, landing a man on the moon in 1969. Here's an info video about Apollo 11, the mission that landed the first men on the moon.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour.
Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirt you wear. Now
30 seconds forward, 20 feet down, 2.5, picking up some dust. Great shadow. 4 forward, contact light. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
today, for here am I sitting in a tin can.
Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world.
Planet Earth is blue and there's nothing I can do.
July 20th, 1969 was a day when the world truly held its breath. On that day, 3 American astronauts circling the moon in a tiny, fragile spacecraft prepared for what would be called man's greatest adventure, the first landing on the lunar surface. Buzz Aldrin made the trip to the moon and back, and he's here with us today. Welcome, Dr. Aldrin. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's marvelous to be here. Please do call me Buzz.
Okay. Now, this is the picture that you're seeing, that you saw outside of your lunar module window on your final approach. Now, at about this time, you realized something was going wrong, right? Now, what happened?
About here, we were getting some program alarms because the radar was beginning to keep the computer busy. We had the rendezvous radar on in case we had to make a sudden change of plans and abort, but we also had the landing radar on so that it could begin to tell the computer how far away the ground was and how fast we were going. So the computer was processing both of that, and it was getting a little bit filled up in its executive program. And fortunately, some people understood exactly what was going on, and they relayed the information that we're go on that alarm, and we're go for landing.
Now, did you have any fuel problems? I mean, how much fuel did you have left when you finally landed?
Well, because it looked like the automatic system was taking us toward a field of boulders and a crater that Neil didn't like, I was looking inside the cockpit, looking at all the instruments and giving him as many numbers as I could. So I didn't get a chance to look outside, but he didn't like what was happening, and we flew a little bit past that, and that, in addition to the computer alarms, caused us to land a little bit long, and of course, going a little bit long, we began to run a little closer on fuel to get over these boulders. So I could tell we weren't coming down quite as rapidly as maybe we might want to. And we had experienced 60 seconds of fuel remaining in the computer simulations many times before, but we'd never gotten so low as to hear someone call out 30 seconds. I think it was calculated afterward that we had maybe 15 or 12 to 15 seconds of fuel left when we actually touched down.
Wow, did you ever see your life before
No, it's just one of those things that you're on edge, and you're full of adrenaline, and it's pumping up, and you're just moving along, and you can do an awful lot in 10 or 15 seconds. Try it sometime. There's a lot of things you can do.
Right now we're going to watch the landing. Here you are.
Right about here you can begin to see some dust being blown up, and it obscures the surface and sort of causes some shadows. And in a short while you'll see the shadow of the landing gear. There's with the probe, and as soon as that probe touched the ground, it turned the light on.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent.
And I called out contact light, and then the checklist, engine stop, and those were really the first words that came from the moon. Then it was Neil's chance to say, Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
So after a couple of hours getting ready, here we are on the lunar surface. And Neil, being the senior person, was the first one down.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now here's Neil on the surface. He's already said his symbolic words of one small step for a man, giant leap for mankind. And you see he's got sort of a clothesline there. What I did was send the camera down on the clothesline so that he could begin to take pictures on the surface.
Good step, yep.
Then it was my turn to come down the ladder, and that was a fairly long jump from the bottom rung of the ladder to get down to the footpad.
Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
What was that like, walking around on the moon?
Well, it was awesome, I'll tell you. Here, humanity had been waiting centuries and centuries, just dreaming, looking up at the moon, and never even thinking there was any practicality. When I was a kid, there was nothing really further from my mind than that one day I might have the chance to go to the moon.
I want to talk about the spacesuit. We're gonna take a look at that in a sec.
Spacesuit's a very necessary thing because in space we are above the atmosphere and we're in a vacuum, and we need to carry along our life support system. And on the moon, it's sort of like being inside a very tight balloon. We had liquid-cooled garments to cool us off on the inside. What you're seeing now is a television shot, sort of ghost-like, of me bouncing around on the moon, intentionally, just for joy, but intentionally to show people how easy it was to maneuver on the moon. The backpack you have to take into account so that you can turn the real sharp corner, as you see.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really stiff. I mean, it doesn't look like
I
you'd
would
be
have
able
weighed
to.
360 pounds here on Earth, but on the moon, it was only 60 pounds. So everything seems to appear in slow motion as you move along. And the suit tends to restrict your activities some.
How long were you in the suit?
Well, we were outside on the surface about 2.5 hours. We had to put, actually, we put the suits on before we got into the lunar module. We never really took them off. We took the helmets off inside the lander, but of course we put them back on again and made all the checks we needed before we began to dump the oxygen out the vent valve so we could open the hatch and then go outside.
Now, a lot of the science that got you on the moon is based on theory, right? So was there ever a time that, you know, you thought that this was wrong or you thought that this just couldn't be done?
We had a tremendous amount of faith in the theory, and it turned out that the tracking that we were able to get from these tracking stations on Earth of a little spacecraft going around the moon was so phenomenally accurate, but it was all based on communication, back and forth, and tracking. And if we lost that communication, we had to train and demonstrate that we knew how to do star and landmark sightings with our sextant so that we could update the computer so that it would have more up-to-date information in a navigational way. Not so that we could land, because if we lost communication, we weren't going to land. We were going to turn around and come back.
Now, when you were coming back to Earth, you had to go into quarantine.
Yes.
Now, why? Did you have strange alien forms?
Well, there are always some doomsday predictors or naysayers or people that predict the unusual or the bizarre. In this particular case, I think it was a legitimate thing to wonder if some germs could have survived for many, many millions of years on the moon, arriving from somewhere.
But we have it on the wall.
Gee, I was young there, wasn't I?
You still look great. No, come on.
Anyway, there was a couple of billion chances that we could have brought some germs back.
Well, in the beginning of the 60s, President Kennedy said that before the end of the decade, he would put a man on the moon. I mean, what was it like to live that vision?
Well, because we didn't continue doing that, I think some people may wonder, is that what we should have done? Or was that before our times? Now, I wrote a book about 5 years ago and looked at the different things that were happening in the Soviet Union and the threatening nature of their arms buildup and how they were threatening different parts of the world and with missiles and the delivery of nuclear weapons. And I really think, looking back on it, that was there couldn't have been a better thing for the president to do. It brought our people together, and it demonstrated, I think, to the other guys, our will to be able to do whatever we said we were going to do, and to do it rapidly and on time and on budget. I think it thrilled the world to see such a fantastic challenge fulfilled the way that it was. It was just such a marvelous success.
We're going to look at one final picture.
Isn't that a classic picture? That's marvelous. And here's the Earth.
Now, did you see it differently from the moon?
The thought, without being in words, went through my mind while I was on the surface of the moon. That how unusual, how ironic, how bizarre that two of us are so far away, further away than two people have ever been before from home. And yet, right now, at this very moment, more people, millions and millions, are thinking about us. And as I look back on it, the significance of Apollo really was not what we did up on the moon, but it happened to so many people back here who shared in that experience and the wonder and the marvel and the fantasy almost of dreams coming true.
It's been a pleasure. I mean, undoubtedly one of the most exciting times in history, and thank you for being here.
It's been a joy for me, Lisa.